You know, I think people tend to overcomplicate filtration. Filtration is actually a pretty simple concept. You take some of the dirty, polluted water from the tank, you run it through something that's going to remove some of that detritus or dirtiness and return it to the tank. Very simple. Whether you do it through an HOB, a hang-on back, whether it's occurring through a sponge filter or any kind of filter really, a canister, anything. The basics remain the same. Take water from the tank, run it through something, and then put it back in the tank. I kept that as the guiding principle in setting up my sumps because I wanted them to be very, very simple. I didn't want some of the real complicated sumps that I've seen on the internet and in some of the more complicated reef systems, which I understand. I mean, they need that kind of complication. For a freshwater tank, I don't think I needed that, so I kept it real simple. It started with the filtration on the 210 gallon, which is right here, right behind me. This 210 gallon was originally the home of African cichlids. The African cichlids that are currently in the 300 gallon here to my left. And in creating filtration for the 210 gallon, I wanted a canister and a sump system. The tank was set up for a sump, what is called a synergy reef system, sump system, which I think is brilliant because what they do is they put what is called the weir, the cutouts, are at the very top of the tank, and so the amount of overflow that you get when the pumps turn off is minimized, and what that does is it really helps to not overflow your sump, which is the big fear that a lot of folks have when they have a sump. So my original design did have some traditional sump characteristics. In other words, it has some baffles. You can see some baffles that I put in, right? These were siliconed in. There's some extra media in there that I'm preparing in case I need it for new tanks. I dump media into the sump that I can use later. But this sump just dumps into two 4-inch wide, 14-inch long socks, then goes through some media, some sponges that are standing up on their own, cascades over these two baffles, and is pumped back by a Shisei, I think it's a 9.0, pumps about 2,500 or 2,700 gallons per hour pump that returns the water to the tank. So I want to take that idea and make it even simpler, and I was able to accomplish that in the filtration for this tank here, the 300 gallon. This is a 300 gallon tank. It's 7 feet across, and it has African cichlids. The African cichlids that were previously in the 210 are now in this 300 gallon, and they're going to be joined very, very shortly. They're going to be joined by this group of fish here. Very pretty African cichlids in this tank. Christogaster, Coingi, Bucochromis, Notitania, rhodiosia yellow, eyebiter. So those are going to be into that 300 very, very shortly. The filtration for the 300 was made super simple. And by that what I mean is there are no baffles in this sump. The water dumps into one sock. So instead of having to monitor and change two socks, I simply monitor one sock. And when that sock reaches the top, starts to overflow a little bit, and you can see when it overflows, it would simply overflow into the sump. But when it starts to overflow, it just gets swapped out for one of these socks over here. I have a whole bunch of them. So in that first chamber, you've got a 7-inch sock, and then 3 14-inch tall, I believe 4-inch wide sponges. So the water has to flow through these Matten sponges that I picked up from Swiss Tropicals. Now this sump, when I do a water change, or when I turn the pumps off, it fills up to that piece of tape. That's how high the water gets. So there's no chance of an overflow. And that's for a couple reasons. One is I have one-way valves on the return lines, so you don't get a back siphon. And also because, as I mentioned before, the weir, the overflow is very high in the tank, so it doesn't allow a lot to come back. Now if you look in here, I have two of these Shisei 5.0 Synchro silent pumps. I'm a big believer in Shisei. Very quiet, and they just work. And they're going into some vinyl hosing. Vinyl hosing is great because it doesn't kink, so you're not going to get a blocked hose. And if you'll notice there is a mountain of Sarah, and these are some specially designed and researched biorings that are producing or will actually house a tremendous amount of beneficial bacteria, together with the deep substrate in the tank. This sump is working absolutely perfectly. Once a week, I top it off. I put a little extra water in it, which gives me a little bit of a refresh in the tank. And every week or 2 weeks, depending on my test results, I go ahead and do a water change. And the fish are thriving. And as my youngest daughter said when she came over to visit, the fish look like they're just floating in air. That sump is a 40-gallon breeder. Some people were saying get a 100-gallon, get a 60-gallon, get a 75. I went with a 40-gallon breeder. 2 pumps, so I have 2 hearts. In the event that one fails, I still have filtration. And there are no baffles, nothing was glued into it. The only baffles I have are the sponges, which they will filter, but also be an exceptional and very, very effective home for beneficial bacteria. So this tank is going to really, really be supporting a tremendous amount of beneficial bacteria once it matures. Now, the maturity of this tank, and what I mean by that is when a tank becomes very stable and able to support life very easily, new life doesn't really stress the system because it's very, very stable. This tank is going to get there much faster than most tanks because of the amount of beneficial bacteria that was transferred over by bringing over a lot of the substrate from the 210-gallon, a tremendous amount, and a big giant bag of crushed coral that is also part of the first chamber. You can see it there at the bottom. At the first chamber there's a bag of crushed coral. So bottom line, all I did was take the concept of filtration and boil it down to its absolutely most simple concept of taking water from where the fish are and running it through something that'll remove waste and then returning it to the tank. That is the simple guiding principle on this tank, on this sump, and it's worked out magnificently. Certainly comment below, especially if you're familiar with sumps. And this does not in any way mean that some of the more complicated sumps out there are wrong or not right. Like I said, some systems do need that. They need reactors, and they want to have areas where they're growing plants and moss and algae, and that's all good. That's all good. I just wanted for this freshwater system absolute simplicity. And I think I've been able to achieve that, and it is working perfectly. It is backed up by an FX6 that is behind the tank. So there is additional filtration on this tank. It is not just the sump that is providing filtration. There are 2 return lines, one at the upper back corner of each side. You have a return line. It's that lock line that you can bend and twist and direct and, you know, move it into any direction you want. So that's my simple sump system. Hope you enjoyed that overview of it. Certainly if you have any questions or comments, share them below, and I'd love to hear them, and we can talk about this sump and a whole bunch of other good stuff at the Saturday live stream. That's Cichlids and Coffee. That's Saturdays at 11 a.m. Central, and that is noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And if you'd like to support the channel and like the content, please give the video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing and hitting that bell. And to support it further, become a Patreon, a member of the Garage Gang, helping me build out this garage, which is where my fish room is, by becoming a monthly supporter. It starts for as little as $3 a month. Details are under the video. That's the Patreon program. Thank you, my friends. You're all very appreciated. And that's it for now. Bye-bye.